I think early on, I would be a true definition of quota breath, very task oriented, very, I have to make this sale. When this person comes in, I have to get this achievement, and I attached my self worth to that. If I didn't hit that number, or if I didn't make that conversion, it impacted how I spoke to myself, how I felt about myself, and how I showed up for my team and for that next tour, because I had this desperation to me. And when I really started learning about empathy in my own self-work, you put the outcomes aside to focus on the front end of the equation, the leading indicators. And I'm not able to do that. It is difficult. It is hard work. It becomes easier when I'm whole, because then I can give without expecting to take in return.
I find that salespeople are probably some of the most competitive folks around. And a lot of salespeople are either former athletes, or they have that kind of type A personality where they really hate to lose, which I think is incredibly difficult, because if you look at the national average for a conversion ratio, it's 23%. So you're failing, if you're average, you're failing 77% of the time. If you're absolutely crushing it and you're converting at 40%, you're still failing 60% of the time. How do you protect yourself from that kind of notion of, I'm going to fail more than I'm going to win?
I love that question, and it reminds me of a very pivotal moment in my life. I was driving with a coworker from Houston to Dallas, and he puts on a podcast of David Goggins. Had never heard of the guy. Since then, I've been very fueled by Navy SEALs and their resilience and their strength. And if you're not familiar with the story, I highly encourage you, listening or reading about him. But here's a guy who was 300 something pounds. He was a bug exterminator, and decided one day he wanted to become a Navy SEAL. And he did it, and then some. And I think that there was a moment that he said that he lets the negativity and the others that were against him fuel him to be even better. And so when you look at the conversions of where you're excelling or where you're not, you're 60% not converting, are you using that as fuel to your flames, or are you letting it squelch your fire? And that to me changed everything. I think there was a mindset of, not everybody's going to love me. Not everybody's going to love my style, my approach, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in sales, and in life. But I can let that squelch me, or I can let it fire me to be even better.
Yeah. I love the comparison. One of the things that we talk about a lot in training is we talk about kind of using either your hero mindset and letting that drive you, or using your ego mindset and letting that drive you. And your ego is so focused on the result.
Yes.
And it can oftentimes, and I think as salespeople, and I'll say it for myself, and I'm a salesperson, I have an ego, maybe slightly fragile one, and maybe slightly big one. Like I really, honestly, I think probably one of my worst, if not my worst trait, is that I hate to lose more than I like to win. I can win a game, and when I'm coaching or when I was playing, and I'd be like, cool, that was awesome, I'm super pumped. If I lose a game, I'll hang on to that and let it like really get me down. But I think as salespeople, focusing on that negative will just continue to drag you down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you focus on the negative, honestly, I think it's, again, your mindset and the self-talk that you tell yourself. Those negatives or the things you're losing at are honestly, they're pathways. If you look at it as, man, I'm really struggling with my inquiry to tour conversion or my tour to move in, guess what? Where you're struggling tells you what you need to focus on. And when you know what to focus on, then you can just go crazy with that versus letting it, deter you from focusing on it.